The morning sun cast long shadows across the United Nations building in New York. Inside the newly built interstellar communications chamber, Lee Dae-hyun checked his watch for the third time. The message from the Galactic Council was supposed to arrive at exactly 9 o'clock Earth time. Lee had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 2 years now. He was a calm man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. People often said he had the perfect face for diplomacy, because he always looked like he was listening, even when he was thinking about something else entirely. The chamber was impressive, built specifically for talking to alien species across the galaxy. Holographic projectors lined the walls, and quantum communication arrays hummed quietly in the background. The room could translate any known alien language in real time and project three-dimensional images so clear they seemed real. Kim Mira, Earth's Secretary General, sat at the main table. She was younger than Lee, with sharp intelligence behind her glasses and a reputation for never backing down from a challenge. Next to her sat Park Jun-ho, head of Earth's Defense Council. Park was a former military officer who had traded his uniform for a business suit, but still carried himself like a soldier. Choi Hana, Earth's leading expert on alien life, completed their small group. She had spent the last 5 years studying the dozens of alien species that made up the Galactic Council. Her specialty was understanding how different aliens thought and behaved. At exactly 9 o'clock, the chamber filled with light. The air seemed to shimmer, and suddenly they were no longer alone. A massive crystalline being appeared before them, its body made of what looked like living purple crystal. This was Zelthara, the Prime Minister of the Vorthak species and one of the most powerful voices in the Galactic Council. Greetings, representatives of the species called humans. Zelthara's voice echoed strangely, as if it came from inside the crystal itself. I speak for the Galactic Council in this matter of extreme importance. Lee stood and bowed slightly. Prime Minister Zelthara, we are honored by your communication. How may Earth serve the Council today? Zelthara's crystal body shifted, light playing across its surface in patterns that Choi had learned meant the alien was choosing words carefully. This is not a request for service. Ambassador Lee, this is a formal ultimatum delivered by the authority of 47 member species of the Galactic Council. The word ultimatum hung in the air like a physical thing. Kim Mira leaned forward slightly, but her expression remained neutral. Park Jun-ho's hand moved almost invisibly toward the communication device that would alert Earth's military leaders. The Galactic Council has observed your species for the required evaluation. Period, Zelthara continued. We have reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's place in galactic civilization. Another figure appeared next to Zelthara. This one looked like a giant insect made of metal and shadow. Its eyes were compound like a fly's, but each tiny lens glowed with red light. This was Thaxon, the war chief of the Dreknari, a species known throughout the galaxy for their love of conquest. Your species shows dangerous signs. Thaxon's voice was like grinding metal. Too much growth, too fast. Too many weapons hidden as peaceful tools. Too much ambition. A third figure materialized, this one completely different from the others. It appeared to be made of flowing light in a roughly humanoid shape. When it spoke, its voice had no emotion at all. This is Etherian Collective Speaker. Unit 77. Statistical Analysis of Human Technological. Advancement shows probability of galactic destabilization at 94.7% within 50 standard cycles. Lee felt the eyes of his colleagues on him, but he kept his own gaze steady on the 3 aliens. I see, and what does the Council propose? Zelthara's crystal body pulsed with brighter light. The terms are simple and non-negotiable. Humanity has 30 standard galactic cycles to comply fully with the following requirements. The air in front of them shimmered, and text appeared in perfect English. Lee read it quickly, his expression never changing, though he felt his blood turn cold. First, Zelthara announced, all human military assets must be surrendered to Council authority. This includes all weapons, defensive systems, and any technology that could be used for warfare. Second, Thaxon added with what might have been satisfaction, Earth's government must dissolve and accept direct Council administration. All decisions regarding human activities will be made by Council appointees. Third, the Etherian unit continued in its emotionless voice, 40% of the human population must volunteer for relocation to council mining and agricultural colonies throughout the galaxy. Selection will be based on genetic and skill profiles to be determined by council scientists. The chamber fell silent, except for the quiet humming of the communication equipment. Lee could hear his own heartbeat and the soft breathing of his colleagues. 30 galactic cycles was roughly 6 Earth months. The consequences of non-compliance are severe, Zelthara said. 12 council species have pledged military support for enforcement of this ultimatum. The combined fleet consists of 1,847 vessels, with the capability to reduce any planet to lifeless rock within hours. Thaxon leaned forward, his metal face gleaming. Your little world has 200 ships, maybe 300 if you count the cargo vessels. Do you understand the mathematics of this situation, humans? Compliance probability increases to 99.3% when subjects understand the futility of resistance. Unit 77 added helpfully. Lee looked at each of his colleagues in turn. Kim Mira's face was pale but determined. Park Junho looked like he was already planning Earth's defense. Choi Hana was watching the aliens carefully, probably analyzing their behavior patterns. I want to make sure I understand correctly, Lee said slowly. The Galactic Council is offering humanity the choice between slavery and death? The Council offers integration into galactic civilization, Zelthara corrected. Your species will be guided by wiser, more experienced civilizations until you learn to control your aggressive tendencies. And if we refuse this generous offer? Lee asked. Thaxon's compound eyes glowed brighter. Then you will serve as an example to other young species about the cost of defying the natural order. Lee was quiet for a long moment. Then to everyone's surprise, he smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile, the kind he might give to a friend who had just told an amusing story. Well, he said cheerfully, that was quite the request. Shall we draft our reply? The 3 aliens looked confused. This was not the reaction they had expected. Species usually responded to ultimatums with fear, anger, or desperate pleading. They did not respond with polite amusement. You have 30 cycles to comply, Zelthara said uncertainly. There will be no extensions. Of course not, Lee agreed, still smiling. We wouldn't want to inconvenience the Council with delays. We'll have our answer ready well before your deadline. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the 4 humans alone in the chamber. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Kim Mira turned to Lee. Ambassador, she said carefully. Are you feeling all right? Lee's smile grew wider. I'm feeling wonderful, Madam Secretary General. I believe we've just been given the most interesting challenge in human history. Park Junho frowned. Lee, they're talking about enslaving or destroying our entire species. Yes, Lee nodded. They certainly are. Choi, what did you observe about their behavior during that conversation? The xenobiologist thought for a moment. They were confident, almost arrogant. They clearly believe their superiority is overwhelming. They didn't ask for our surrender, they demanded it. That suggests they see us as so far beneath them that negotiation is pointless. Exactly, Lee said. They've made the classic mistake of underestimating their opponent. In fact, I don't think they consider us opponents at all. We're just a problem to be solved. Kim Mira was beginning to understand. And problems can surprise you in ways that opponents cannot. Now you're thinking like a human, Lee said, his smile becoming something entirely different. Something that would have worried the aliens if they could have seen it. Shall we show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate a species that learned to split atoms before they learned to live in peace? 4 months remained until the Galactic Council's deadline, and Earth had become a world transformed, but not in the way the aliens expected. Dr. Yang Sujin stood in the main laboratory of Luna Research Facility, watching her team work with quiet intensity. The moon base had been expanded dramatically in the past few months, though official records showed only routine maintenance and upgrades. What the Council's surveillance couldn't detect were the massive excavations happening deep beneath the lunar surface. How are we doing with the quantum manufacturing nodes? She asked Bae Cumin, her chief engineer. Cumin was a practical man who had spent 10 years in the military before becoming an engineer. He understood both the science and the urgency of their situation. Better than hoped, Cumin replied, checking his tablet. We now have 47 nodes operational across the facility. Each one can produce materials that exist in quantum superposition until the moment of use. The Council's sensors will read them as simple metal and ceramic components. Sujin nodded. The quantum manufacturing technology had been theoretical until the ultimatum arrived. Now driven by necessity, her team had made it real. They could create weapons, armor, and ship components that would phase in and out of normal spacetime. To alien sensors, human ships would appear to be carrying standard equipment right up until the moment they opened fire. "What about the communication networks?" she asked. "Ryu Hyan's people have been busy," Cumin said with admiration. "The quantum entanglement communicators are working perfectly. We can talk instantly with any human settlement in the galaxy, and the aliens can't intercept or trace the signals." Across the solar system, Ryu Hyan was coordinating the most ambitious colonization effort in human history. As Director of Colonial Affairs, she had been quietly establishing human settlements for years. But in the last 4 months, that effort had become something much more significant. The official records showed normal colony expansion, families seeking new opportunities, corporations establishing mining operations, research teams studying distant worlds. What the records didn't show was that each new settlement was actually a carefully planned military outpost disguised as a peaceful colony settlement. 47 is now fully operational, reported her assistant, Nam Sun-ho. He was young but incredibly organized, capable of tracking dozens of simultaneous projects. The mining equipment includes concealed defense systems, and the research station is actually a sensor array that can monitor Council fleet movements in that sector. Hyan smiled as she reviewed the holographic display showing human settlements scattered across known space. Each glowing dot represented a self-sufficient community that could survive independently and, if necessary, disrupt Council operations in their region. "The beauty of it," she explained to her staff, "is that everything we're doing is technically legal and appears completely innocent. We're just an expanding species looking for new homes and opportunities. The Council expects that from young civilizations." Meanwhile, on Earth itself, Lieutenant Colonel Song Taiho was training what the government called the Volunteer Defense Corps. To outside observers, it looked like a civilian militia program, the kind of desperate preparation you'd expect from a doomed world. The reality was very different. "Remember," Taiho told his current class of trainees, "the neural interface education system allows you to learn in accelerated time. What feels like weeks of training to you has only been hours in real time." The trainees nodded. They were ordinary citizens, teachers, factory workers, artists, shopkeepers. But connected to Earth's advanced neural education networks, they were becoming something extraordinary. The same technology that allowed students to learn languages overnight was now teaching combat tactics, weapons operation, and strategic thinking at impossible speeds. Taiho's assistant, Captain Lee Minho, monitored the training progress. "Sir, we now have over 2 million people who have completed advanced combat training, though on paper they're just taking basic self-defense classes." "Excellent," Taiho replied. "How many understand the full scope of their preparation?" "About half. The others think they're just being taught to defend their homes. They don't realize they're being trained to fight a galactic war. This was intentional. The fewer people who knew the complete plan, the less chance the Council's spies would discover it. Earth's leaders had learned the value of compartmented information from their own turbulent history. In a different part of the world, Dr. Kang Hee-won was working on perhaps the most important project of all. Her background was unusual. She had been a successful game designer before becoming a military strategist. Her specialty was understanding how different types of minds approached conflict. "Run simulation 847293, she told Earth's most advanced artificial intelligence network. The AI systems had been expanded dramatically in recent months, though officially this was just for improved economic planning. The holographic display filled with ships and tactical projections. Hee-won watched as simulated human forces fought against Council fleets using every strategy her team could imagine. "Interesting," she murmured to her colleague, Dr. Shin Minji. "The Draknari always respond to flanking maneuvers the same way. They form defensive squares and try to blast through with superior firepower. They can't seem to adapt when that tactic fails." Minji nodded, reviewing her own data. "The Etherians are even more predictable. They calculate optimal solutions and execute them perfectly, but they can't handle situations where the variables change faster than they can recalculate." This was the key insight driving Earth's strategy. Every Council species had evolved specific ways of thinking and fighting. Those patterns had served them well for thousands of years, But they had also become limitations. Humans, having spent their entire history fighting other humans, had learned to be unpredictable. "We have one enormous advantage," Haiwan explained to her team. "We're the only species that has spent millennia fighting beings exactly as intelligent as themselves. Every other species either dominated their world early or faced only simple competition. They've never had to deal with opponents who think as complexly as they do." The work continued across Earth and throughout human space. Factories that appeared to be producing civilian goods were actually making components for weapon systems. Research stations studying agricultural techniques were developing methods for making any planet self-sufficient during a siege. Communication improvements were actually quantum entanglement networks that would let human forces coordinate instantly across galactic distances. Most importantly, humanity was preparing psychologically. The ultimatum had done something the Council never expected. It had united Earth's fractious population behind a single goal. Political differences seemed insignificant when faced with extinction or slavery. Ambassador Lee spent these months traveling the world, meeting with leaders and ordinary citizens alike. His message was always the same. "We have been given a choice between slavery and death. Humanity chooses a third option." People asked what that third option was, and Lee would smile his diplomatic smile. "Victory," he would say simply. As the deadline approached, the Council's surveillance reported exactly what they expected to see. Increased military production, some panic among the population, and desperate attempts to improve Earth's defenses. They saw humans building more ships and training more soldiers. What they didn't see was the scope of the preparation. They didn't understand that humanity had spent 4 months becoming something new, a distributed civilization that could fight on 47 fronts simultaneously, using weapons and tactics that existed outside normal space-time, coordinated by people who had learned to think and react faster than any previous generation in human history. With 1 month remaining before the deadline, Ambassador Lee requested a formal audience with the Galactic Council. The request was simple. Earth wished to discuss the terms of surrender in person. The Council agreed immediately. This was exactly what they had expected. The humans had finally realized their situation was hopeless and wanted to negotiate the best possible terms for their submission. As Lee prepared for the journey to Nexus Station, he met with Earth's leaders one final time. "Are you certain about this approach?" Kim Mira asked. "Once you deliver our message, there will be no going back." Lee's smile was gentle but confident. "Madam Secretary General, humanity stopped being able to go back the moment we received that ultimatum. Now we can only go forward. And if they don't react the way we hope?" Park Jun-ho asked. "Then we'll discover just how much fight this small dog really has," Lee replied, referencing an old human saying that would soon become famous throughout the galaxy. The transport ship that carried Lee and his small delegation toward Nexus Station appeared to be a standard diplomatic vessel. The Council's sensors detected no weapons, no unusual technology, no signs of military preparation. They were correct, technically. The ship carried no weapons that existed in normal space-time. It had no unusual technology that wasn't disguised as something harmless, and Lee's small delegation showed no signs of military preparation, because they were prepared for something much more sophisticated than mere military action. They were prepared to change the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. Nexus Station hung in space like a massive crystal flower, its thousands of surfaces reflecting the light of the Centauri system's twin stars. The station was enormous, large enough to house millions of beings from dozens of different species. It served as the neutral meeting ground for the Galactic Council, a place where the galaxy's most powerful civilizations came to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Ambassador Lee Dae-hyun stood at the observation window of his transport ship, watching the station grow larger as they approached. Beside him stood Kim Mira, still serving as Earth's Secretary General, and Park Jun-ho, whose calm military bearing hadn't changed despite the diplomatic nature of their mission. The fourth member of their delegation was the most surprising, Han Ji-ho, a 12-year-old boy who happened to be Earth's youngest certified diplomat. Ji-ho was small for his age, with bright eyes and a curious expression that made most adults underestimate his intelligence. That was exactly why Lee had brought him. "Remember," Lee said quietly to his companions, We are here to deliver a message, not to negotiate. No matter what they say or threaten, our position remains the same. And if they attack us here? Park asked. Lee's smile was calm and confident. Then they will learn something very important about humanity much sooner than planned. The docking process took an hour. The station's protocols required extensive scanning and security checks for any species bringing a delegation to the council chambers. The scans showed exactly what Lee wanted them to show. 4 humans carrying no weapons, no dangerous technology, and no obvious threats. What the scans couldn't detect were the quantum phase devices woven into their clothing, the neural enhancement interfaces hidden beneath their skin, or the fact that each of them had undergone months of accelerated training that had prepared them for situations far more dangerous than a diplomatic meeting. They were escorted through the station's vast corridors by a squad of Vorthak guards. The crystalline beings towered over the humans, their purple bodies crackling with energy that could stun or kill if necessary. Other aliens stopped to stare as the human delegation passed. Some looked curious, others hostile, but most seemed to regard them with the kind of pity usually reserved for condemned criminals. The council chambers were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. The circular room was hundreds of meters across, with seats arranged in rising tiers that allowed representatives from 47 different species to see and be seen. The variety of alien forms was overwhelming. Crystalline beings like the Vorthak, insectoid creatures with metal carapaces, flowing energy beings that barely maintained coherent shapes, and dozens of other forms that defied easy description. At the center of the chamber sat the 3 beings who had delivered the ultimatum: Prime Minister Zelthara of the Vorthak, War Chief Thaxon of the Draknari, and Etherian Collective Speaker Unit 77. They looked down at the small human delegation with expressions that ranged from satisfaction to contempt. Representatives of the species called humans, Zelthara's crystal voice echoed through the chamber. You have requested this audience to discuss terms of surrender. The council will hear your petition. Lee stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back in a relaxed posture. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, we thank you for this opportunity to address such a distinguished gathering. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled aliens. The human ambassador's tone was perfectly polite, but there was something in his manner that didn't quite match what they expected from a defeated enemy. The deadline for compliance expires in 1 standard cycle, Thaxon announced, his metallic voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. Your world has had sufficient time to prepare for integration into council authority. What terms do you wish to negotiate? Lee looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and other visual organs of dozens of alien species. When he spoke, his voice was clear and carried easily to every corner of the room. After careful consideration of your ultimatum, Earth's government and people have reached a unanimous decision. He paused, and his diplomatic smile grew slightly wider. We must respectfully decline your generous offer. The silence that followed was absolute. For several seconds, not a single being in the chamber moved or spoke. Then the noise erupted. Representatives leaped to their feet, howling, chittering, and producing sounds in frequencies that human ears couldn't detect. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of outraged responses in dozens of languages. Impossible. Thaxon's roar cut through the chaos. You cannot decline. This is not a request. Statistical models show 99.97% probability of human extinction if compliance is refused, Unit 77 added in its emotionless voice. Zelthara raised one crystalline appendage, and the chamber gradually fell silent. Ambassador Lee, perhaps you do not understand the situation. Your species faces complete annihilation if you refuse council authority. Surely you do not choose death over life. Lee's expression remained pleasant and diplomatic. We choose freedom, Prime Minister. We appreciate the Council's interest in humanity's development, but we believe our species can contribute more to galactic civilization as independent partners rather than subjects. A new voice spoke from the upper tiers. Independent partners? The speaker was a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of silver metal. You are a single world with primitive technology. What could you possibly offer the galaxy? An interesting question, Lee replied. What we offer is a different perspective. Humanity has spent its entire existence learning to cooperate despite our differences. We believe that experience might be valuable in a galaxy as diverse as this one. Young Han Jiho stepped forward. His small voice somehow carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. My species has a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. We may be a very small dog, but we have a very big fight. Several aliens made sounds that the translators identified as laughter. But it wasn't friendly laughter. Child, Thaxon said, leaning forward until his massive metal face dominated Jiho's view. Do you understand that my species has conquered 17 worlds? Do you know how many civilizations have spoken brave words before being crushed beneath our fleets? Jiho looked up at the towering alien without flinching. Probably a lot. But I bet none of them had ever fought a nuclear war against themselves and then decided to work together anyway. Humans are really good at learning from their mistakes. Kim Mira spoke for the first time. The Council seems to believe that humanity's rapid technological development indicates aggressive tendencies. We would suggest that it actually indicates adaptability. When we encounter a problem, we solve it. When we face a challenge, we find a way to overcome it. This challenge is different, Zelthara said. 12 Council species have pledged military support. The combined fleet consists of 1,047 vessels. Your entire world possesses perhaps 200 ships. The mathematics are simple. Park Junho smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several nearby aliens shift uncomfortably. Mathematics can be very misleading. On our world, we had a battle where 300 soldiers held off an army of millions. We had wars where the side with fewer ships and planes still won. Numbers matter, but they don't tell the whole story. What story do they tell, human? Asked a serpentine being whose scales shifted color as it spoke. Lee answered. They tell the story of a galaxy that has become comfortable with predictable patterns. Species fight the same way their ancestors fought. They use the same strategies, the same tactics, the same thinking that has served them for thousands of years. He paused, his smile becoming something entirely different. Humans learned long ago that the best way to win a fight is to fight it in a way your enemy doesn't expect. The chamber erupted again, but this time the noise was different. There was less outrage and more uncertainty. Some of the aliens were beginning to realize that the humans weren't behaving like a defeated species seeking mercy. They were behaving like representatives of a power that considered itself equal to the Council. Unit 77's form flickered as it processed new calculations. Human confidence levels suggest access to unknown capabilities. Requesting clarification of technological assets. Our technological assets, Lee said pleasantly, are our people. Every human who has ever lived has contributed to our understanding of how to survive impossible situations. We've learned from every war, every conflict, every challenge our species has faced. That knowledge doesn't disappear when we reach the stars. Zelthara's crystal body pulsed with agitated light. You speak of survival, but you choose extinction. This is not logical. It's perfectly logical, Jiho said. You're asking us to choose between dying quickly or dying slowly. If we surrender, humanity stops being human. We become whatever you want us to be. That's not survival. That's just a different kind of death. And if we refuse, Kim Mira added, at least we die as ourselves. Though we don't intend to die at all. The last statement sent another wave of confused murmurs through the chamber. Thaxon stood, his massive form casting shadows across the human delegation. You cannot survive our fleets, he growled. This is not courage, it is madness. Lee looked up at the towering alien warrior, his expression still calm and... The Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, exactly one standard cycle after the deadline expired. Admiral Cho Sun-hee watched their arrival from the bridge of the ESS Indomitable, humanity's flagship. Through the massive viewing screen, she could see the alien vessels materializing in flashes of exotic energy. Count them, she ordered her sensor operator, Lieutenant Kim Yuna, 1,000. 847 ships confirmed, Admiral, Yuna reported. 12 different species represented. The largest vessels are Draknari battleships, each one the size of a small city. Sun-hee nodded calmly. She was a small woman with graying hair and steady hands, a veteran of humanity's last war before they reached the stars. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for months, but seeing the reality of the Council fleet was still overwhelming. And our forces, she asked. 212 ships in defensive formation around Earth, reported Commander Park Tae-soo. Luna Base reports ready status. All hidden installations are standing by. The numbers were exactly what the Council expected, a hopeless mismatch that should result in humanity's swift defeat. What they couldn't see were the true capabilities of those human ships, or the nature of the weapons now targeting their fleet. On Luna, Colonel Song Taiho stood in the command center of what the Council believed was a research facility. In reality, the moon had been transformed into the largest weapon in human history. The entire lunar surface was now a network of railgun systems capable of accelerating projectiles to 15% of light speed. Target the lead Draknari battleship. Taiho ordered his fire control officer, Captain Lee Minho. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The railgun system charged with a deep hum that vibrated through the moon's structure. On the surface, what looked like scientific equipment rotated to track the massive alien vessel. Aboard the Draknari flagship, War Chief Thaxon studied the human formations with contempt. They deploy their ships in traditional defensive patterns. No imagination, no innovation. This will be over quickly. His tactical officer, a younger Draknari named Vex, reported fleet status. All ships ready for attack, War Chief. The humans have made no aggressive moves. They appear to be hoping for mercy. There will be no mercy, Thaxon growled. They chose extinction. We will deliver it efficiently. But before he could give the attack order, space around his ship suddenly filled with white-hot metal, traveling at impossible speeds. The first railgun projectile struck his flagship's shields with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, were completely unprepared for a solid object moving at relativistic speeds. The impact sent shock waves through the massive ship. Damage reports flooded in from across the vessel. Most disturbing of all, his sensors couldn't determine where the attack had come from. War Chief, Vex called out in alarm. Massive kinetic impact on the primary hull. Shields at 60%. From where? Thaxon demanded. Where is the enemy? Before anyone could answer, the second shot arrived. This one came from a different angle, striking another Draknari ship. Then a third and a fourth. The entire lunar surface had become a weapon, firing from dozens of concealed positions. The moon? Vex whispered in shock. They turned their moon into a weapon. Admiral Sunhee watched the alien fleet's confusion with satisfaction. Now, she ordered. All ships activate quantum phase systems. Let's show them what human engineering can really do. Across the human fleet, ships that had appeared to carry standard weapons suddenly revealed their true nature. Weapon systems that existed in quantum superposition materialized from normal space, their exotic matter components becoming real at the moment of firing. The Council sensors, which had detected no unusual armaments on the human ships, suddenly registered weapon signatures that defied classification. Energy beams that shouldn't exist according to known physics tore through alien shields. Missiles that phased in and out of normal space struck targets that thought they were safely protected. Impossible, Unit 77 transmitted from the Etherian command ship. Human vessels are deploying technology not present in previous scans. But the real shock came when Captain Ryu Heian's voice echoed across Council communication channels from 47 different star systems simultaneously. Council fleet, her transmission began. You are surrounded. Suddenly, the tactical displays aboard every Council ship lit up with new contacts. Human forces had appeared throughout the galaxy, emerging from what the Council had assumed were harmless mining colonies and research stations. Every supply line, every retreat route, every Council stronghold found itself facing human ships that had materialized as if from nowhere. How is this possible? Zelthara's crystal voice cracked with stress. Our intelligence showed only minimal human expansion. Your intelligence, Admiral Sunhee replied over an open channel, saw exactly what we wanted it to see. While you were watching Earth, humanity was preparing for this moment across the galaxy. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Council forces, with their overwhelming numerical advantage and superior technology, should have crushed the human defenders within hours. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to behave according to known military doctrine. Human ships used tactics that no other species had ever employed. They would attack from one direction, then phase shift to appear somewhere completely different. Their weapons seemed to adapt in real time to counter alien defenses. Most confusing of all, human forces seemed to anticipate Council moves before they were made. Dr. Kang Hyewan, monitoring the battle from Earth's command center, watched her predictions play out with satisfaction. Draknari Squadron 7 is forming Defensive Formation Pattern 12, she announced. Their next move will be a coordinated assault on Grid Section 447. How can you know that? Asked her assistant Dr. Shin Minji. Because they've used that pattern in every major battle for the last 300 years, Haiwan replied. Captain Park, enemy squadron approaching your position. Recommend Formation Scatter 7. Captain Lee Minho, commanding a squadron of human fighters, executed the recommended maneuver just as the Draknari ships arrived at his previous position. His fighters seemed to dissolve into space, reappearing behind the alien formation with weapons already firing. The Draknari squadron leader tried desperately to adapt to the human tactics, but his ships couldn't match the impossible agility of the human fighters. Pilots who had been trained in neural-accelerated environments could think and react faster than any normal biological being. They're not just faster, Minho reported to his wing. They're predictable. Watch for pattern recognition opportunities. Throughout the solar system, the same scene played out repeatedly. Council forces with superior numbers and firepower found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who seemed to know exactly what they were going to do before they did it. War Chief Thaxon, his flagship now severely damaged, tried to rally his forces for a coordinated assault on Earth itself. All ships ignore the human vessels. Target the planet directly. But as his fleet moved toward Earth, they discovered that the human homeworld was protected by defenses that shouldn't exist. Energy shields that flickered in and out of normal space deflected their weapons. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be simple communication satellites revealed themselves as sophisticated defense systems. Most shocking of all, the planet itself seemed to be fighting back. Weapons fired from the surface struck ships in high orbit with impossible accuracy. The humans had turned their entire world into a fortress. War Chief, Vex reported with growing panic. We've lost 40% of our fleet effectiveness. The humans are jamming our coordination systems with some kind of quantum interference, the quantum communication. Networks that humanity had been secretly deploying for months were now disrupting alien command and control systems. Council ships found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate their attacks or call for reinforcement. Speaker Unit 77, processing the flood of impossible data, came to a conclusion that shocked even its collective consciousness. Probability of Council victory has dropped to 3.7% and falling. Human technological capabilities were severely underestimated. The tide of battle turned when Colonel Taiho activated Luna Base's final surprise. The moon's mass drivers, which had been firing solid projectiles, suddenly began launching something different. Quantum mines that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The mines spread throughout the Council fleet's formation, invisible to normal sensors. When they detonated, they created pockets of twisted space-time that disabled alien ships without destroying them. Entire squadrons found themselves trapped in gravity wells that shouldn't exist, their engines powerless against forces that operated outside normal physics. Impossible. Thaxon roared as his flagship was caught in one of the quantum fields. No species develops this technology so quickly. Admiral Sun Hee's voice came over the communication channel, still calm and professional. War Chief Thaxon, this is Admiral Cho Sun Hee of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is disabled and surrounded. Do you wish to discuss terms? For the first time in his career, the mighty war chief of the Draknari found. 3 months after the battle that shocked the galaxy, Ambassador Lee Dae-hyun stood once again in the council chambers of Nexus Station. But everything had changed. The seats that had once held representatives of 47 allied species now contained delegates from dozens of different factions, some supporting the old council, others backing what was being called the Independent Species Alliance. Lee bore new scars on his face from defending Earth's embassy during a desperate Draknari boarding attempt in the battle's final hours. But his diplomatic smile remained unchanged, perhaps a bit warmer than before. Beside him stood Kim Mira, who now carried the title of Earth's first galactic president, representing not just humanity but the growing coalition of species that had chosen cooperation over domination. The chamber itself looked different. Where once rigid hierarchies had determined seating arrangements, now there were circular discussion areas where different species could meet as equals. The old system of the powerful speaking down to the weak had been replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history: actual democracy. The motion before us today, announced the session moderator, a crystalline being from a species that had remained neutral throughout the conflict, concerns the establishment of the proposed galactic constitution. The floor recognizes Han Jiho of Earth. Now 13 years old, Jiho had grown taller but retained the bright intelligence that had impressed the galaxy during humanity's first appearance before the Council. He stood confidently at the central podium, a small figure addressing beings from dozens of worlds. Honored representatives, he began, the constitution we propose today is based on a simple idea, that no species, no matter how advanced or powerful, has the right to enslave or destroy another sentient people. His words were translated into dozens of languages, creating a symphony of sounds that filled the chamber. Some species made noises of agreement, others of skepticism, but all listened. We humans learned something important in our history, Jiho continued. The strongest civilizations are not the ones that conquer others, but the ones that help others become strong. We want to build a galaxy where every species can reach its full potential. In the audience, former War Chief Thaxon listened with an expression that would have been impossible to imagine months earlier. The proud Dreknari warrior had been stripped of his rank after the defeat, but something unexpected had happened during his captivity. He had begun to study human military tactics, trying to understand how his superior forces had been so thoroughly outmaneuvered. What he discovered changed his understanding of warfare itself. The humans didn't fight to destroy their enemies. They fought to make it impossible for their enemies to continue fighting. It was a completely different philosophy, one that offered victory without the massive casualties that Dreknari culture had always accepted as inevitable. I request permission to speak, Thaxon announced, rising from his seat. A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. The former war chief had been silent during previous sessions. The floor recognizes former War Chief Thaxon of the Dreknari, the moderator announced. Thaxon stood slowly, his metal frame gleaming under the chamber's lights. I have spent 3 months studying human military doctrine, he said. I expected to find the secrets of some terrible new weapon. Instead, I found something much more powerful, the secret of fighting without hatred. He paused, and his compound eyes focused on the human delegation. My species has conquered 17 worlds. We destroyed 3 civilizations completely. We thought this made us strong. The humans taught us that true strength comes from making your enemies into allies. Colonel Song Taiho, now serving as military advisor to the Alliance, nodded respectfully to his former enemy. The two had spent many hours discussing tactics and strategy, finding common ground in their shared understanding of warfare's complexities. In another section of the chamber, Speaker Unit 77 of the Etherian Collective sat motionless, its energy form flickering as it processed new information. The defeat had forced the Etherians to undergo what they called logic, reconstruction, a fundamental revision of their understanding of probability and strategy. Previous calculations contained systematic errors, Unit 77 announced when given the floor. Human unpredictability was classified as primitive chaos. Revised analysis shows this unpredictability to be sophisticated adaptive intelligence. The Etherian Collective wishes to study this phenomenon. Dr. Yang Sujin, now serving as the Alliance's Director of Technology Sharing, had been working with Etherian scientists for weeks. The quantum manufacturing techniques that had given humanity its edge in battle were now being adapted for peaceful purposes, creating technologies that could benefit every species in the galaxy. The beauty of cooperation, she explained to her mixed team of human and alien scientists, is that every species brings different strengths. The Etherians understand energy manipulation better than anyone. The Vorthak can work with crystal matrices in ways we never imagined. Together we can create things that none of us could build alone. This was the philosophy driving the new galactic order. Instead of the old system where advanced species exploited primitive ones, the Alliance promoted mutual benefit and shared development. Prime Minister Zelthara of the Vorthak had been one of the first to embrace this new approach. The crystalline being's people had always been skilled at information storage and processing, but they had struggled with creative problem-solving. Working with human researchers, they were developing new forms of technology that combined Vorthak precision with human innovation. The old council believed that stability required control, Zelthar explained to a gathering of species representatives. The Alliance proves that stability can come from cooperation. When every species benefits from the system's success, every species works to protect it. The changes weren't limited to politics and technology. Throughout the galaxy, species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to work together. The Corvin, who had been enslaved by the Council for generations, were now free to develop their natural talents for environmental engineering. The Zerathi, whose peaceful nature had made them victims of more aggressive species, found protection in the Alliance's mutual defense agreements. Ryu Haiyan, now coordinating colonial development for the Alliance, oversaw the establishment of mixed-species settlements throughout the galaxy. These colonies were proving that different forms of life could not only coexist but thrive together. The key, she explained to a group of new colonists preparing for departure, is understanding that diversity is strength, not weakness. Every species sees problems differently, which means every problem can be solved in multiple ways. As the months passed, the old Galactic Council found itself increasingly isolated. Species after species petitioned to join the Alliance, attracted by its promise of equality and mutual benefit. Even some of the Council's strongest supporters began to question whether the old system of domination was really the best way to organize galactic civilization. The Constitutional Convention continued for weeks, with representatives from nearly 100 species working to create a framework for galactic governance that had never been attempted before. The document they produced was revolutionary, a set of laws that applied equally to all species, regardless of their technological level or military power. The Constitution established the fundamental right of all sentient species to self-determination. It created mechanisms for peaceful resolution of conflicts. Most importantly, it included enforcement provisions that would prevent any single species or group from dominating the others. This document, President Kim Mira announced as the final vote was tallied, represents the first time in galactic history that governance has been based on consent, rather than conquest. Every species that signs it becomes an equal partner in building our shared future. The vote was overwhelming. 87 species agreed to join the new Galactic Alliance, leaving only a handful still loyal to the old Council system. Ambassador Lee, now bearing the title of Alliance Diplomatic Coordinator, found himself once again facing former enemies across a negotiating table, but this time the conversation was about cooperation rather than ultimatums. The Alliance extends an invitation to all remaining Council species, he announced during the final session. Our goal is not to defeat our former enemies but to turn them into future friends. When the sessions ended, Lee stood on Nexus Station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. The galaxy looked the same as it had months earlier, but everything had changed. Humanity had not only survived the Council's ultimatum, but had used it as an opportunity to reshape galactic civilization itself. A young human reporter approached him, part of the press corps covering the historic events. Ambassador Lee, she asked, throughout this entire crisis you never stopped smiling. Even during the darkest moments, even when Earth faced extinction, you maintained that diplomatic smile. Why? Lee considered the question for a moment, his eyes still fixed on the stars. When he turned to face her, his smile was as warm and genuine as ever. Because, young lady, humans have learned that a smile can mean many things. It can mean happiness, welcome, friendship. Or it can mean, I know something you don't. The trick is making sure your enemies never know,